every time a situation involves one party and the other, who's the one who has to be seen as the villain and the oppressor, and who's the one who's seen as the victim and the oppressed? Everything that they're recommending is not to the benefit of the man or even the marriage or the relationship. It's only to the potential benefit of her. And the problem is, if you get individuals who think that way with that mindset, and then you're putting them into places where they're teaching children, where they have people's relationships and marriages in their hands, and they are deciding what people need to put in their bodies. And they have very extreme views that tends to lean towards one gender versus the other versus a balanced view. You can see how this can create a really, really toxic situation where now young boys are being diagnosed and medicated than ever before with ADHD. They're trying to address their impulsivity, all this extra energy. We need to get them to behave at that age more like the girls do. And now you're seeing where it's like on every single level, not only is this not helpful, it may even be potentially causing harm, because now there's a market in an arena where men are supposed to get help where they feel like they can't get the help. So that's how I actually think the combo of telling a certain group that they felt they could market to and could sell to and keep them on the treadmill of keep coming back, keep paying, and teaching said group that much of what's wrong in their life is always the result of the opposite sex, and encouraging them to leave marriages and your happiness is what's most important. These are therapists that's using these talking points, which is insane. And nobody is saying it. Well, not nobody. Obviously, there's therapists who think this way, but it's far few and in between. And I'm bringing light on all the therapists, men and women, that know this is wrong, that knows this needs to change, and saying we need a much more balanced view, and our field has effectively been co-opted. And we need to really address this, because this has gotten so bad that men are deleting themselves at insane rates. They're not going to the very people who are trained to help. And the people who are there and trained to help, they are coming from a political and ideological lens where they don't see the significant value in a lot of the men that's sitting before them. It's dangerous. It's wrong. And we need to call it out. And I honestly think, instead of coming for people like me that's trying to bring balance to the situation, we need to reevaluate all the people who have been pushing this type of ideology throughout most of their careers.
You said the people your age are noticing them, are more receptive to your approach.
Yeah.
Is it going to take for you all to become the leaders within the industry? I mean, you still have people, college professors and different people who are running programs who are still telling this stuff. How do we change that trajectory?
It sounds crazy, but coming on platforms like this and people who work in these fields, you have to risk something. You have to risk it. Because if your belief is it's just going to get better one day, it's been worsening. Our families are more broken up than ever before. Marital rates are in a horrible spot. Single parent household rates are up. Nearly every single sector of society is functionally worsening, minus technology, which is getting better. Everything else in terms of our humanity and our connection is getting worse. And we're becoming more divided than ever before. So no, it's not going to get better if all the people who know this is going on can articulate it even better than me are choosing to be silent. So at some point, there needs to be a massive grassroots movement of men and women that recognizes if we're going to strive for actual equality, we have to recognize the true needs and grievances of men and normalize that as a part of treatment, a part of education, and a part of help and care.
Do they realize that there's a problem, though? I mean, they're probably so entrenched in their thinking, their dogma, their doctrine, their education that they got, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, whatever. Do they even realize that this is a problem?
Most of the people who are angry about what's coming out of my mouth and the people who are bringing this attention, they know that there's a problem. It's that they've been taught who's the cause of the problem.
Gotcha.
They haven't been taught that they're a contributing factor to it. They've been taught to be externalizers, that if there is an issue, if there is a problem in society or in your life, it is the fault of somebody else. And in this case, and in this situation, It just so happens to be the patriarchy. It happens to be the man or men in general or masculinity. They've been effectively trained. If there's an issue in my life, this is how, and you want to know how deep it is. Every time you're talking to the women, the people who think this way, all my exes are narcissists now. That's what that means. Right. So you chose them, you got with them, you messed around with them, you may even gave them kids, and you didn't know all this, but you didn't know that they was a narcissist. And you have an amazing ability. Every single person over the last 10, 15 plus years, they all narcissists. What's the odds? That's the conclusion you're going to draw if you've been functionally taught in your churches, in your life groups, in your homegirl settings, amongst the therapists, in the educational areas. If you've been functionally taught, and I definitely will break this down way more once I have time to record my own content about what I'm calling the matrix, the matriarchy of matrix, the matrix matriarchy, where it's functionally like the Marxist matriarchy. And that the Marxist matriarchy is when you take the classical definition of Marxism and separating groups by economically, either you're an oppressor or you're the oppressed. When you take that concept and then you apply it to cultural definitions and norms, somebody always has to be the one who's eventually seen as the bad guy. And someone's always going to be seen as the victim. And the problem with that is that when you take that Marxist mindset and apply it overall to society and attach it to cultural definitions, you get to a point or place where every time a situation involves one party and the other, who's the one who has to be seen as the villain and the oppressor, and who's the one who's seen as the victim and the oppressed? So what happens is you'll find instances where clearly the woman was the aggressor, clearly she's wrong, clearly she lied, clearly she contributed to what's going on. They can't see her as wrong. They'll have a built-in mechanism in their mind, in their way of conceptualizing what happened, to where she's always, so she cheated. Well, what wasn't he doing? She wasn't happy. Huh?
Right.
Like you would never be able to do, because the guy in the scenario is always guilty. So if she does something wrong, DDG, a great example going on with I think her name is Halle Bailey or whatever her name is. She made some very concerning remarks about safety and her life and having her child that would, in normal circles, would potentially resulted in you having your child removed or being given to the father. But because he's the guy in the scenario, well, she was going through postpartum, she had this going on, she had that going on, but you wouldn't do that if the man was the one who was making these type of comments. So what I'm trying to do is normalize not tearing down women per se, as much as normalizing, identifying, and shining light on the far extremist version of feminism that's resulted in and infiltrated all the very areas where we're supposed to learn, where we're supposed to be helped, and we're supposed to be effectively saved from ourselves. This is kind of seeped into so many different things. And again, you'll know the talking points. You'd be like, oh, if you say something, clearly he's a misogynist. Oh, if a woman says it, she's a pick me. She clearly has internalized misogyny. They have a built-in catechism of go-to points to kind of insulate and protect themselves from being able to acknowledge that this is no longer a equality movement. This is a woman advocacy movement, but only typically for the worst aspects of what women are allowed to get away with. It does not represent equality in any way, shape, or form.